But before I kick off, it'd be interesting to get a sense of the audience in terms of the split between whether you are responsible for attracting people to a website or capturing those people that get to the website in terms of responsible for the revenue. So if your job is more to do with capturing or driving traffic, stick your hand up. Okay, thank you. And those people are more responsible for capturing the money from those people who've been driven to the site. Both. Okay, that's good. That's helpful to know. And there's obviously a few vendors in the room, so that helps me in terms of where I'm pitching the actual talk today. So what we're talking about today is how the new automated broom can potentially sweep clean. And I think, like me, your life will have been impacted by technology and the advance of technological capabilities. The pace of change is astounding. Some of it's good, I guess, and some of it's not so good, and some of it affects our lives every day, and some of it affects just our work life. I heard a talk recently by a professor from Bristol who was talking about software developments that were proven and waiting in the wings, as it were, simply for the cost of computing to drop to a point where it became commercially viable to release these developments into the world. And it's staggering how quickly that cost of computing's coming down. And so whether we like it or not, technology will continue to impact the way we live and the way we work. Our challenge, I guess, is to harness that and manage it effectively and fairly. What I'd like to cover today is a relatively small area of advancing technology, and it's particularly related to the way we work around the task of selecting and presenting products to visitors in the digital shopping channel. You may refer to this as merchandising, and there doesn't seem to be a commonly agreed term to describe this activity, but for want of a better title, I've come up with one, and I've called it the selection and presentation of products and content to make the best use of screen real estate. That's kind of a mouthful, but if you break it down, what we're trying to do is select and then present products and content, which is the focus of attention. Make best use of is the purpose, and then the scope is the real estate, and of course it's getting smaller and smaller. So trying to define which products are delivered to those areas of screen real estate is very hard. And as we said before, teams that tend to be broken down into digital marketing, which is responsible for the generation of interest and spending all that money with that big giant Google, and the others more to do with ensuring those visitors to the site who they've spent all that money on get a meaningful experience. And I guess in terms of the success or measuring the success of a visit, well, a purchase would be good, but a meaningful experience is the minimum. And given that conversion rates hover between perhaps 1% and 3% in B2C retail, there's a lot of scope for improvement. So I wanted to look at what a meaningful experience was from a couple of angles. Firstly, perhaps from the shopper's angle. And it's very high level, and it's kind of very generalized. So a shopper would probably say, well, it should be easy to find goods whether I search or whether I browse. I think we'd probably accept that. I want to see goods and offers that are interesting or relevant to me. Yeah, probably go along with that. And then allow me to buy goods I like with ease. I want to do it easy. But of course, there are caveats on all of those, aren't there? So let's take the first one again. It should be easy to find goods whether I search or browse, regardless of what I type into the search box, how I spell it, and with a menu structure that actually makes sense to me. And so it's kind of gets a little harder. See goods to me that are interesting now, while I'm shopping now. Not what I did yesterday or last week. Show me now. And I want to buy those goods with ease. And what they really mean is with whatever payment method I want that suits me. Oh, and by the way, don't try showing me other things that you think I might like. Unless, of course, it really is relevant. So that's a set of interesting challenges from the shopper's side. What about from the retailer's side? Well, I think the first one would probably be very similar. We want to help the visitor find goods easily, whether they search or whether they browse. And then we also want to make sure that we show the goods that meet our business objectives. And again, let's look at the caveats. visitor finding goods easily where they search or browse, but also we want to show them goods that they don't know we have and other things that we feel are of interest. So there's the commercial side coming to this challenge here. And then show goods that meet our business objectives. We want to show high-value items maybe, or we want to show profitable items, or those which we have excess stock. So those challenges are straightforward, but quite difficult to meet. And they throw up some interesting challenges, given there's a limited amount of real estate, lots of products, hundreds and thousands, in the case of some of our clients, millions, and there are millions of me's, millions of visitors. So this combination, and trying to deliver both sets of objectives and overlaying the impact of time, which I referred to and I'll come on to in a second, makes this an extraordinarily complicated task to actually deliver. But it's one with immense benefits if the challenge can be met. So here we have the impact of user interest, business interest, and this time significance. Okay? And what we're trying to deliver is a relevant experience. One that probably the visitors don't actually notice as being a great experience. They just get on with shopping and they find it easy. They won't say, oh, I had a great relevant experience on X site or Y site, or I had a great personalized experience. Because in some instances, you might see personalized in that central box in a triangle. But actually, we don't believe that personalized should be in that triangle as kind of front and central. Because personalization, and it's talked about an awful lot and has been here, we think is one of a number of merchandising strategies that can be used. After all, we can't personalize a site for a new visitor because we don't know them. What we can do is give them the best, most relevant experience as they arrive and when they arrive, based on what lots of other people have done. So now, using a metaphor for my talk about the broom and sweeping clean, I want to look at some of the different brooms that have been applied to this particular challenge. The first one, and surprisingly still in use on some websites, is the manual method. Before the advent of automated or merchandising systems at all, products selected for display were typically crudely ordered in either alphabetic or in price sequence, or the date they're added to the catalogue, without much consideration for working out whether we could maximize revenue or optimize the customer experience. Now, we're not going to dwell on the manual category, but what I will say, if you do find yourself in this category, there's hope, because at least you won't have to put yourself through the experience of the next generation broom, which is rules-based merchandising. Now, still a level of manual effort, but quite a lot of heavy lifting done by that kind of electricity and that broom. And rules-based merchandising has been part of the e-commerce ecosystem for around 10 years now, and it's significantly impacted the shopping experience. For instance, it's ensured that customers can find products, even if they've used synonyms or for products or category terms. And products on category and search results pages are ordered using more business-focused rankings, such as by bestseller or by margin. And key offers, discounts, and messages are adequately communicated to customers. But things have moved on and continue to do so. E-commerce managers are more experienced and have a greater understanding of the challenges that they face. And the retail environment has evolved, and it's much more demanding. And these systems were mainly designed to deliver the objectives of the retailer and don't necessarily address the desires of the ever more demanding shopper. So although a once welcome addition to the e-commerce manager's tool set, the weaknesses in the rules-based methodology are starting to emerge. And in some cases, deficiencies are actively hindering retailers' ability to compete. What do I mean? Well, one fundamental design flaw with the rules-based method is that it requires merchandisers to anticipate all applicable trigger scenarios. At first, defining triggers doesn't seem too arduous a task. But when working at the coalface, it's easy to forget important variations on conditions that you've set. For instance, a search term, black dress, might not be triggered by little black dress or cocktail dress. So there's a lot of manual effort required to actually define what could be the wrong triggers or different triggers. Another flaw, but one that's necessary for the solution to be usable, is that rule triggers don't have to match exact scenarios. Merchandisers simply have to state the highest common condition, and the scenarios will fire based on the rule. Now, this is an efficient method of creating rules, but the downside is that it's possible for multiple rules with contradictory actions to fire simultaneously because they all match non-specific triggers. This creates kind of a push me, pull you situation with rules conflicting, and it can be a really significant problem for retailers with more than one merchandiser. And I know teams of merchandisers can be tens and into the 20s in some of the clients that we work with. So over time, as retailers grow and their merchandiser strategies become more sophisticated, again, the number of rules can grow dramatically. Unfortunately, as rules are humanly defined, or defined by humans, and can't be anticipated by the developers in advance, it's difficult for the system to be optimized, and installations have been known to just stop working once the number of rules being processed reach a threshold. So we get an overload situation. And I'm aware of retailers that actually switch off their rules-based merchandising systems around peak period because they know that they just can't respond to the traffic peaks that hit them. And one of the greatest issues with such systems is that the efficacy, the hard word to say, of rules are rarely tested. Now, if rule effects are assessed, it's often done unscientifically. Now, the area of experimental design is in some quarters of the industry recognized as a necessary component in the e-commerce workflow. But as a discipline, it's actually largely absent. Most rule-based merchandising systems have avoided the issue completely, relying on the business manager's preference to kind of ask no questions, hear no lies. And manually created rules require manual experimental design to prove their worth, and that takes time and money. So hard to test is a problem. And finally, the retailers have long since recognized that segmenting customers and tailoring the customer experience pays dividends. However, in reality, there are more and more viable segments than retailers can effectively target using their existing manually administered systems. So getting to a one-to-one or a more granular level of segmentation is really, really difficult. So the problem we face today is to merge the needs of the shoppers that we've looked at and retailers so that both parties enjoy this symbiotic relationship without one frustrating the other. And because the problem's so complex, we need to turn to alternative and more advanced solutions to address this challenge. And in my metaphor here, it's our automated robo-type vacuum. What's needed is a solution that's more automated, needs less manual intervention, and that can make decisions at speed. Now, in mathematical terms, and we as an organization are highly mathematical and highly computer science based, what we're faced with is an optimization problem. So putting all those products in the right places, the right people at the right time is an optimization problem. To be accurate, it's a complex optimization problem. And if you search Google, I think there are 17 million responses, search results for complex optimization problem. These are problems that occur throughout the world in all kinds of scenarios. And there are lots of very clever people looking to solve these types of problems. And what we have online, unlike in store, is an optimization problem. But to summarize in a non-mathematical way, what we're trying to do, our problem is we want to show the right products to the right customer at the right time. Now, I know each of those rights needs a level of definition, but we can get to that, and we haven't got time to go into each definition today. So what we need is an optimization strategy for our product exposure. And what we need, actually, is what we determine as a product exposure strategy. Now, I'd be interested to know how many people here could answer the question of which of your products were not shown to a customer in the last 30 days. Just think about that for a second. Which of your products were not shown, exposed to a customer in the last 30 days? Wouldn't that be an interesting statistic? Not many people can answer that question. I think I've asked that in 3 or 4 conferences like this, and only one person said, we can tell you that. Understanding which products are exposed and not is a hell of a clue when it comes to working out what people will buy and what they won't buy, or could buy and what they couldn't buy. So you won't be surprised to know that solutions like this exist. I wouldn't be standing here today if they didn't. So using our metaphor, it's the vacuum cleaner, the robo vacuum cleaner, if you like. Now, I want to just have a look at the difference between these rules-based approaches I've talked about and what I would call an automated approach. A rules-based approach typically starts with some manual intervention. So we start to look at customers, we start to segment them, we start to look at the product and the content data. What are we going to show to different people in different circumstances? And that's where the rules start to come in. And the rules are delivered to the system by people based on business objectives. Which kind of products do I want to surface, expose? Then automation kicks in, and based on customer behavior, those rules start to fire. And that's the level of automation that's in these systems. So they do that bit of lifting. Results come out the other end, which have to be analysed based on the business objectives, again, by people. And if the results don't meet the business objectives, they go back in and change the rules. So we have this cycle. In this scenario, we have quite a lot of manual intervention, but we do have a level of automation, and that's being brought about by these merchandising systems. So that's my Hoover. Now, in an automated approach, what we start with is the business objectives. So a business team started to high level and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. And then we can use insight from behavioral activity and product and data and content data that's fed to the site. And it's the algorithms and the advanced predictive analytics and machine learning that is then automated, that then drives the results to deliver the business objectives. So we haven't got people involved in this process. So it's much more efficient. We're using advanced technologies such as predictive analytics and machine learning techniques. And it's doing it in an incredibly quick way to deliver those business objectives. And if you want to steer and influence and manage those results, you can do that by what we call light touch interventions. You can nudge, you can influence, you can suggest to the algorithms that certain products or segments or sets of products can be promoted. But the system will work out whether that's a wise thing to do. So we wouldn't pin a product to the top of a category list. We would say, we suggest that that product sits at the top of the list, but if it's not bought, the system will automatically drop it down the order and put a more relevant product to meet the objectives at the top. So as you can see, we have a more automated, less manually involved way of doing things. Now, what I want to do now is have a look at kind of the benefits that this delivers and see what the tool like this can really tackle. Because I wanted to try and put this into real life situations that you guys have to deal with every day. And I want to hopefully explain that this solution kind of revitalizes the trader or the merchandiser or the buyer, however you call that person, and to discuss some of those benefits. The first one I want to look at is actually improving the quality of the search results themselves. Different types of retailer have different levels of search usage on their sites. Fashion retailers tend to go kind of between 8 and 15%, but you might have electronics retailers or book retailers up in the 60%. And obviously, you need to work out how that is for you. A basic text search, which most systems come with, something like a solar type approach, delivers results, but they deliver the same results every time you do use a search term. What learning systems can do is introduce this feedback loop. So what happens is that we're recording what happened downstream after a search phrase was used. So when people search for black dress, what do they go on to look at? What do they go on to put in the basket? What do they go on to buy? What do they ignore? What ads do they respond to, etc.? And that gives us a behavioral feedback loop. So we can improve the quality of the search result next time without armies of search technicians involved. We then get things like contextual feedback. So where did that action take place? At what page in the site did they push that product or that ad? And that gives you a sense of the context. And then we have this analytical feedback, so we can see insights from what people have done and why they've done it. And this delivers a much, much improved search results. And systems like this have been around for a while. It's when you actually expand that into navigation and recommendations and top seller lists, etc. And that goes throughout our solution, for instance. This is one of my customers in Scandinavia. They're called the Amazon and Nordics, they're known as CDON. They're a 500 million turnover company, and they have 10 million items in their catalogue. They adopted behavioural search in 2014 from a text-based search, and they saw an 8% increase in site conversion rate. That's overall site conversion rate. Those numbers are quite staggering when you put them in context. They also saw an 18% decrease in search exits. So when someone made a search phrase, they didn't bounce when they got to the results page. That's kind of a fifth improvement, phenomenal improvement, and that's a lot of money in the bank. The next area I want to look at is trends and list ranking. And before I do, I'm just going to talk about time for a second or two. If we look at this, this is 52 weeks of sales of a product. It's just a made-up chart for here. But what's important to recognize is that actually information, more recent information, is much more helpful in these algorithms than older information, okay? So when you're looking at ranking information, quality of information, more recent information is really good. What people tend to do is they look at things like top lists, and they take, what are my top selling products over a period? So what are they over a year? What are they over 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, a few weeks? And how you manage your top selling products is vital to how you present your products in all kinds of ranking lists and category lists and search lists. And if you were to say, show me the top selling products over a year, you get very consistent selling products, but you wouldn't get peaks of trending products or hot products. If you looked over the last couple of weeks, you get your trending products, but you wouldn't get your consistent products over a year. So we've developed systems and rules and methods that measure the selling rate of individual products, which will come to bear on the next slide or two. So we can use this to catch things like trends. What typically happens with a product, let's say this product is selling over 20 time periods, it could be days, it could be hours, whatever, it doesn't really matter, just for the illustration. So our sales start to trend and they peak and then they die down again. What typically happens in a manual environment is we catch the trend, but we catch it a little bit late. And what happens is that there's a cost here, because what we're doing, we're presenting the wrong products at this time. This product could be starting to peak, but we're not showing it enough. We're not giving it enough exposures at the right time. And then when it starts to die off, we tend to show it for too long when we should be showing other products. And we've probably bought traffic for that product at that time. So we're expending a lot of money in driving traffic to products that actually just died off. So being able to actually optimize your revenues by exposing trending products for the right time, that's amazing. That's a really good way of seeing more revenue through your site. And this just doesn't apply to kind of high fashion. This applies to everything. So, you know, if it's winter and we need snow shovels or ice shoes or, you know, salt from a DIY store, those things can be picked up really, really quickly. And they trend very quickly as well. We can catch trends within minutes of things happening. And going on to talk a little bit about these top lists and how we present products, here's an example of a listing sequence. Now, if this was the 10 best-selling products over a year, that would be okay, but it wouldn't show you what were called trending products. We believe that a top list, or a list, should be volatile. It should contain a combination of hot-selling products, consistent sellers, and trending products. And our scientists reckon it's around about this type of combination of products in the top 10. So your hot product should be at the top of your lists, and your consistent sellers and trending should be mixed in there. And they could be trending for all kinds of reasons. They could be trending because of a campaign that you've instigated. It could be because of a press article that you weren't aware of. But the point is, the system learns and makes the list more volatile and starts to push the products that you should be pushing at that particular time. Now, that just doesn't apply to the top 10 products. It applies to your whole catalogue, because what we tend to do is hold a current dynamic site rank of all your products in the catalogue. So we know, out of all your 10,000 products in this example, which ones are hot, which ones are consistent, and which ones are best-selling. So if someone comes in and clicks on Navigate Women's Dresses, you get 913 items. We want those products to be listed in a volatile way. We want hot products, trending products, and consistent sellers in that list. And that applies to any subset of products. So if we navigate down to those 12 blue dresses in 12 to 14 size, they say it's still important how we rank them. Imagine if this is a telephone, you can only see 3 products. It's vitally important you get the right 3 products for that customer in that circumstance and that context. And the same applies to search results. Those 42 items have been pulled out of your 10,000 list, and they need to be in the right order. Because all of those men's shoes will be relevant in terms of search ranking. There'll be 0.001 of a difference between them. So they'll all be relevant to a customer, but it's really important you get them in the right order. So that's kind of ranking. The final one to look at is how this affects the way you work, the way the merchandising teams work. And we've looked at customers before they start working with us, and we've kind of split down the workload, and you can kind of agree or disagree with this. It's a straw poll, really. We reckon about 25% of a merchandiser time is spent on managing content, about 35% on data analysis and decision making based on data, and 25% is manual effort, and 15% is what we call creative time. And that's the valuable time, actually. It's when the merchandisers are using their experience and their creativity. And it's actually the fun time. It's the bit they probably enjoy the most. Now, when you move to a more automated approach, we see a massive change because we're taking an awful lot of the effort away, the heavy lifting from data and decision making and the manual effort. And what do? They do the more creative stuff. So move from 15% of their time to 50% of their time doing creative, enjoyable things that you're really paying them for. And just taking an example, if this was a 37.5-hour week, the difference would mean 55.5 hours per month for a merchandiser to spend. Imagine what they could be doing with that time. So to me, this means that it's not the end for online merchandisers. These modern automated merchandising systems can increase efficiency and improve accuracy, but they aren't sentient automatons. They still require management, and they need direction, and they're inevitably blind to business objectives and campaigns outside of the digital channels that they control, all of which merchandisers need to take account of. And I guess there'll inevitably be some resistance to the adoption of these systems. There normally is when you start to use automation. But there are perhaps 2 key industry trends that will make the adoption of these algorithm-based automated merchandising systems more compelling. Firstly, senior retail managers are becoming more demanding of their merchandisers, requiring them not to only demonstrate their work, but also prove its worth. Merchandise have to show that they're squeezing every last drop of revenue from the digital channels that they manage. And for these newer solutions, experimental design and leveraging only those strategies that are proven to work is fundamental to the design. Merchandising on a hunch is no longer part of the equation. And secondly, as marketers and merchandisers move away from segmentation models towards more personalized experiences, segments of one, the operational demands of managing such fragmented customer experiences necessitate some degree of automation. Managing business rules by hand simply doesn't scale, as I hope I've proven. The final nail in the coffin for rules-based merchandising systems is being hammered home by the customer. The entire retail landscape is changing. Customers are becoming more demanding, better informed, and less loyal. Tomorrow's customer will not tolerate an experience that's anything less than superb. And a customer experience that's tailored around them and how they like to shop is key to delivering such an experience. If you do a search, I did a search last week for online merchandiser jobs, you'll find job sites with between 400 and 2,500 vacancies in the UK alone. Clearly there's a lot of work not being done, and clearly there are too few people available to do so much work, and clearly it's time to automate. But online merchandisers won't need to seek new employment or different employment. Rather, they'll be freed up to do the creative stuff, to deal with the merchandising anomalies that even sophisticated algorithms can't tackle. So here are a few compelling reasons why one should consider automating the online merchandising process. We can expose more products to more people. We need to find ways of getting those products in front of more people. Showing the same stuff to everybody doesn't work. It can be improved. We can save time, and time is money. We can increase revenue. We've seen some phenomenal results from this kind of technology being adopted by some pretty large brands. And we can deliver more productive, hopefully, people with more enjoyable jobs. So we've got 4.5 minutes left. I've hit my time slot, and I'm open to any questions. And thank you very much for listening.